Welcome to Corporate Underground. Thanks, Tony, for the thumbs up. We've finally got our technical issues moving. Although Tony has frozen, it looks good again on him. I want this week. I want to introduce a good friend of ours, Tansel Ali. Tansel has a long list of achievements, but most of those you'll be able to remember by the end of this because he's a memory expert, also a speed reader, 4 times memory expert for Australia. But he's also a person that's had a lot of challenges throughout his life. One of the very first questions I asked Tansel was, "Man, you must have always had a good memory." And he actually said, "No, I had a shit one." That's why I actually learned to work on my memory. So today we've got Tansel on memory experts. Also want to talk to Ronan and Tony the Frozen. He'll be singing some tunes out of the Frozen. We'll be calling him Elsa for the rest of the day. So I'm going to throw to Ronan. And Ronan, when you met Tansel, what did you think?
I'm always impressed by people who have a skill that I don't. So memory clearly is a skill, but you can learn it. So I'm fascinated. I'm really looking forward to this interview to figure out kind of how Tansel did it, some tips and tricks so that maybe I can improve. So yeah, I'm hoping to get a lot out of this very short conversation with him.
Tony, you're back. Elsa,
I'm back.
You're here. Elsa, you're back.
Awesome.
What are you hoping to achieve today? What do you want to know about Tansel?
I'm less interested in him, more in his tactics, to be honest. I love you, man, but I'm interested in fixing my memory, so I'm looking forward to any tips he has to share for some things we can do at home.
Okay, so
let's get straight into it. Let's get straight into it then. Enough of us. Tansel, tell us how you became so good at memory.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Sorry, Ronan.
Yeah, I bet you use that all the time.
I do use that all the time. It's sort of getting a bit stale, so I have to think of maybe another name, like Raj or something that suits. Anyway, what was your question again? Sorry. Okay, I'm kidding. That's another one that I use. Look, going back to the start, I guess my memory, I always thought it was really bad, right? I always thought that, I'm never going to remember names. I was terrible at that. My listening skills were terrible. People would speak to me and then moments later I'd forget what they were talking about. I'd watch the news and, my parents, my grandparents would say, "Oh, what was on the news?" I'm like, "I don't know." And they'd say, "Well, you just watched it." I'm like, "How did that happen?" And I just thought, "Oh, that's normal." But it wasn't normal. And then, I finished university, went on to working, and then I started forgetting a lot of things at work as well. And my, manager would have a go at me. And, so I sort of realized that my memory wasn't that great. Then I discovered a thing called memory techniques as I was, going through. There was a really powerful system back in the day. This was back in 2002. It still exists today. It's called Google. Right. So what you can do now, hear me out. Right. What you can do is you can search, and you can search on the memory techniques. Right. How to improve your memory. So I did that. Lo and behold, I got a couple of websites, and the website showed you how to use some of the techniques. I thought, what the hell is this? So I tried a few of the strategies of storytelling and associating and word association, all this sort of stuff, and I realized that I was able to remember. I thought, why the hell wasn't I taught this at school? I failed at university for 3 years before I got my degree. I was meant to finish in 1999. I graduated 3 years later because I kept failing.
It wasn't because you were partying or drinking or chasing the opposite sex, was it? I just want to check.
Well, I mean, we could talk about that another time.
He doesn't remember, Ronan. He does not remember.
Selective memory, that one.
Yeah, so I didn't know these techniques existed. So once I got into them, I realized that, wow, they were so powerful that I was not able to just remember stuff. I could, do things that I wasn't able to do before, like, read books and remember them. Because before then, I hardly ever read any books because I'd read a few pages and then forget straight away, right? So there were strategies there that I'd never come across. And once applied, I thought, well, is that all? I didn't have to train for hours and hours and hours on end. I just learned the technique and straight away I saw the result. I thought, surely it can't be this easy. Why don't they teach this at school? And ever since that point, I thought, well, this is frustrating. I might as well get it out there myself, and started working with people. And that's been going on for about 20 years now, close to. So, yeah.
So when was the point that you made the jump? I mean, like, you're doing memory, you're remembering things, you've got better at it, and then you became a memory expert. I mean, there's lots of other people doing this. If there's a championship, I'm sure there's a list of people that are lined up to remember things. I mean, how many times did you do it before you became a champion?
It's a good question. I mean, for me, becoming a champion is really about making use of the skills that you've got. That's a real sign of the champion. So if you've learned something and you're able to apply it to better your life, then you've won. But in actual competition, it took me about 6 years to try and get to a point where I can actually win a competition. But it only took me just a few months of training to get to where I want in life, to use these skills to remember more and learn better and all that sort of stuff. So for 6 years, I entered competitions. I'd, remember more than everyone, but because of little mistakes, I'd, eventually come last or things like that. So after 6 years, I've had to learn better strategies of competing and learn a lot more in terms of, well, what's effective memorization and, how do I train better? So I got into more mental performance. And once I understood that side of the brain, then every year that I entered, I actually won 4 years in a row. And that was the sign for me that it's not always about remembering. It's about how can I use these skills to better my mental performance. And again, that sort of transfers to everyday life in terms of, focus and concentration, or, solving problems, or decision making, or even leadership skills. So that's where I found the huge benefit of, being able to train my brain so that I can have an impact in these areas.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've all been stuck with that person at the party that tells you boring fact after boring fact after boring fact, and you go like, "Get me out of here." So,
Tony.
Yeah, so, but you touched on a couple of the benefits there. So people are kind of going, "Okay, who cares? Who cares? I can remember stuff." But I'm sure, just from what you said, just those books, those techniques, there are actually some huge benefits in whether you're either employed by somebody or whether you are running your own business. So what are the kind of benefits that you teach people and you found yourself out of it?
Yeah, I'm actually not a big fan of memorization, believe it or not, being the memory guy, the memory athlete, right? That's not my passion. My passion is, what can you do with the skill of memory? So, for example, when we're memorizing things together, when we're connecting together, we're actually building stories, right? So the art of storytelling is a key factor in how we win competitions and how we memorize something. So if you're able to tell better stories in real life, what skill is that going to bring you? That's good for sales. It's good for marketing. It's good for presentations. Being able to connect the dots for someone hearing and listening to you. Now they understand your message a lot better because you can make it memorable for them. Do you see what I mean? So the benefit of having a trained memory is so that you can make communication more memorable to others, but also you're working on the skill of making communication memorable to yourself as well. So now you can learn a lot better. So there's so many different factors, even getting rid of negative thoughts in your head, because now you're better at telling stories, right? If you've got negative things on your mind, now you know how to shift that to telling better stories and not worrying about the negative ones. So it's actually got mental health implications as well. And I've worked a lot with people that have anxiety and stress, that using storytelling in a way to better their mental health is actually an amazing skill to have. And again, this is just by memory training, so people can't necessarily put memory training and mental health together, but once you understand the concepts behind it, there's just so many benefits to training your memory.
So when you've got this with anxiety, for example, how would a technique that you'd be able to use for an anxious person to be able to use a memory technique to be able to help that? What would you suggest that they do as maybe a tip or a trick, a hack?
Yeah, sure. Usually what that entails anxiety is someone's already created a story in their mind, right? And if you're making something memorable, usually have an experience, a story built up that's got a lot of emotion in there. It's got color. It's got a certain style to it. you've already shaped the narrative. And the more you feed into this narrative, the more you delve deeper into that anxiety, or you can be the opposite end as well, excitement. So since we're dealing with anxiety, it's almost like, I don't know if you did this in mathematics at school, you probably have the difference equations where if you take a plus and you take it to the other side, it becomes a minus, right? So forth. So what you can do with memory is that because you know what makes things memorable, you also know what makes them less memorable. So if you've got anxiety, the trick is to say, okay, what's not going to make this memorable? If you take all the colors, all the vision, right, and see everything, instead of seeing it colorful, see everything in the gray color, right? If you picture something in gray, it almost makes it almost meaningless, right? Then what you do is you take yourself out of that situation and you see this situation get smaller and smaller, like a little circle. And what you can do is you can keep focusing on this circle, right, as best as you can. And what happens over a period of time is that this gray, insignificant experience gets less and less in your mind. And then what you can do is you can create a better scenario full of color, full of excitement, full of emotion. And then what happens is that because this anxiety is smaller and that new story you got is stronger, that's going to override essentially this anxiety. Now, obviously, it can't happen for everything. Like if you've got deep down trauma, you're going to need some other mechanisms for that. But for a lot of stuff, these memory training systems work because you're telling a better story and you know how to make things less memorable at the same time. It's just a matter of practice.
With the storytelling, like, because this is how many tribes in many locations they use stories to pass on their history before they wrote things down and maybe created plays and things like that. Is there, in your ability, because you talk about turning it into a story versus trying to remember data, is there a template or pattern you use to create a story, or is it just turning, like, how would you take something you want to remember and turn it into a story?
Good question. Look, what you're essentially trying to do when you're connecting a story is when you get data, and when I say data, it's, words are pretty much data, numbers are data, things that are abstract, right? Technical terms, technical phrases, technical words, that's all data because our brain has to process and encode that into meaningful information, right? I'm going IT speak here. So data doesn't make sense. We're, turning into information. So that's what we want to be able to do. And that needs encoding, right? So how the encoding process works is that we need to be able to tell the story. We need to first create an image and then tell a story. And that's the process of making things memorable. I'll give you a classic example. Names are quite abstract when you think about it. If I meet someone named John, right, that's quite an abstract name. And a lot of people forget names because of the abstract nature. But if you create meaning, if you encode that into something memorable, you're going to remember it. Now, when I think of John, to encode that, I think of a toilet. Right? I think of a toilet. So I think, okay, I've got an image now, but an image is not enough. You need to create a story, right? So now I can picture the John that I met sitting in a toilet. Maybe he's doing something. I don't know. He's on his phone or reading a newspaper if people do that these days. So now I've created a little narrative. So next time I see that guy, I'm going to say, oh, that guy was sitting in the toilet reading. His name's John, right? Same thing with Matt. I could picture you maybe, slipping on a mat. I think, okay, this guy, he's laid out the welcome mat for me. His name's Matt. So even something small as that is as powerful because now you're not just looking at a name, you've encoded that into an experience. And that's what the brain remembers. So that's how you encode data and visuals together.
Awesome.
Now, I know a little bit about your backstory, and you've suffered from Crohn's disease from quite a young age. How has your mental power been able to help you manage with that disease and actually look after and to focus on other things other than what you're going through at the time?
Yeah, look, it is a good question. It's something that I did struggle for a period of time because if you've got a really good memory, there are disadvantages as well, right? Not a lot of people know this. Because what you're doing is you're training your brain to make better stories, right? Now, if you've got an anxious moment, or if you're feeling sad, or if you're depressed, or if you're in pain, guess what's going to happen? That story is going to develop even better. So you're going to be even sadder. You're going to be in more pain, right? So because I wasn't aware of it for such a period of time, I was feeling down a lot of the time. But because I learnt, I guess, through practice. And, because I coach a lot of people, I learn a lot from that as well. Once you're aware of it, then you go, okay, now I know how to change the narrative, change the script, so I can make better stories. So I guess with a condition like that, it affects more the lifestyle than just simply having pain, because pain is, it's only temporary, but the lifestyle is affected for a longer period of time. So it's just about, for me, okay, what story am I telling myself, that after this pain, I'm just going to get back to, my everyday life, or, I can do these things to seem a bit normal, So it was easy to, I guess, move forward once I had these skills, but without the skills, again, without being aware, you can easily get dragged down just by your, negative thinking or anxiety and things like that.
Brilliant. Right. Well, look, one last question from me, Tansel. Look, I know you're a musician. You love music, and one of the things that you're passionate about is taking that. Have you found that your memories helped you with music, or taking you in a different direction around that? Is that something where's that gone?
Look, I think it's interesting because music is. It happens at a different part of the brain as well, where the creative element comes in, and it's already sort of encoded information as well. So, it's interesting because it's just pure emotion and experience, and I don't think it's necessarily helped me, or it's almost on a different platform, right? So it's like a painter, just doesn't need any effort whatsoever. You just do it for the sake of doing it, and you have something. So I haven't necessarily found that it's assisted, because it's already using a lot of the memory skills anyway by creating an experience. So it's a really good question, but I just find one of those things is just letting it go and just enjoying the process rather than forcing yourself. You can't force yourself. You can't put the effort to be creative. You got to allow the space and time and environment for that to happen. So yeah, so that's for music. I haven't really, worried about it too much or at all.
No, excellent.
Awesome. Well, so we've really got to wrap up. Tansel, first of all, thanks for sharing some really good nuggets there. I'm going to try at least one of them. I can't try the image because I've got something called aphantasia, and I can't see images in my head. Like, I know the number 7 and I can't see it in my head. I just can't. I only found this out a few years ago. I thought everyone was like me. It's that thing when you're abnormal. I thought everyone was like me. So Tansel, where can people find you to know more about how they can improve their memory and just continue that conversation? I'm sure they've got lots of questions that we barely scratched the tip of the iceberg today.
Yeah, I think, look, the best thing for people to do is to train their memory, because just through sheer training that you'll get a lot of answers. Not so much, learn this skill, learn that skill, but just like physical training, when you exercise, get on a treadmill or do weights for a certain period of time, you start to see physical developments and improvements in your body and health. Right? Same thing with mental training, and that's something that I help people with. So they can jump on my website, tanselali.com, or follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, those, and feel free to ask me some questions, message me, and I'm more than happy to help people, because as I was mentioning earlier, people generally have a lot of questions around memory, and a lot of people want to be able to do certain things that they think they can't do. So memory training allows for you to sort of open up and understand a lot of these skills. So yeah, they can message me on my website, and I'm more than happy to help.
Thanks, Tansel. Look, no, awesome. Thank you very much for coming, and from Elsa, myself, and Ronan. But look, I've known Tansel for a while. He's one of the most generous guys. He's got a great backstory. Everything's happening around mental capabilities at the moment. You've got Alzheimer's, you've got anxiety, you've got depression. There are so many things that get helped here. We're in lockdown again here in Melbourne, but this is a great chance to actually go and Google or go and look at Tansel's website and actually look for some help to start with these things. It's free. It's a starting point. Then reach out to Tansel. He'll polish. He'll help you guide that, and let's start changing our mental abilities to get out there. I mean, today I took from storytelling, something that I try and do a lot of. I wake up with gratitude, but there's a lot more I can do. So thanks this week, Tansel. Tony, any final words from you?
They're sorry that I'm using dial-up to enter today. This is the issues of being in the country during lockdown. But no, we'll put your website in the description and show notes, Tansel, so people can follow that, and also link to your LinkedIn. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And, Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Tansel.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.